What's going on, people? We are Tottenham TV, back here for another match review stream. As Spurs have lost by 3-2 yesterday at the Tottenham Hotspur Stadium at the hands of Arsenal. And I think I can speak for all of us to say it was an extremely frustrating day at the Tottenham Hotspur Stadium yesterday, where I, for one, thought we put in a good display. I did think we put in a good display. I did think we were the better team. And I think you're looking at a lot of fans with very angry reactions yesterday, especially going 3-0 down at half-time. But, I mean, when I look at it and when I look at the first half display, we were 3-0 down at half-time. I wasn't there at half-time, like, angry with the display that we did make. I was just mainly angry at different aspects, you know, defending set pieces, calls from the referee and stuff like that. I wasn't really angry with maybe the patterns of play Spurs were creating and how we were dominating the game in possession.
Yeah, it was a very weird first half because we played quite well. We were doing a lot of good things. We were winning the ball high up in a lot of dangerous situations. We were causing Arsenal quite a few issues in terms of their build-up play. Arsenal barely had the ball in our half.
71% possession in that first half.
Yeah, and that going into that game, I told you Spurs would have had 71% possession. You would have taken that. Yes, I know Arsenal have this different way of playing, especially we saw against Man City, very pragmatic, making sure they're not giving away any easy chances, knowing that they can, on the counter-attack, give teams problems. But we didn't even give them that many counter-attacks. They only had one counter-attack that whole half. They did score from it, but that was from a follow-up from when we should have had a penalty. And the biggest disappointment was those set pieces. Now, to be fair, we knew that was going to be a problem. We knew set pieces was going to be an issue going into this game. So that is understandably a massive frustration by a lot of fans who say, you should have planned for this. You should have known that there were going to be a big problem with set pieces. You should have come up with a way of combating that, which wasn't doing the same thing we've been doing for the past few weeks. The biggest annoyance is you go back to the last game we had against Newcastle. Every set piece they had a chance, pretty much. We looked completely weak from those set pieces. They scored one and they could have scored a lot more from those set pieces. And yet we came into this game seemingly no change in approach. Seemingly we're going to defend the set pieces exactly the same way. And the most annoying thing is they only had 2 set pieces and they scored from both of them. And that is understandably a massive frustration by a lot of fans. So when you look at that narrative, obviously I'm not going to sit here and say that was acceptable, because it's completely unacceptable how we defended those set pieces. We were so weak from them, and we should have known what was coming, and it seemed as though we were caught flat-footed by the most obvious threat, essentially. But I was proud of how we approached the game on the ball. I was actually pretty happy with how we were containing Arsenal for large parts, how we were making sure they weren't at that much of a threat. And I think in open play, we were generally very, very good, and we were causing the problems in terms of catching them in our pressing. The only shame is we didn't, create the amount of openings we should have. We did have a few. Obviously, Romero hit the post, and he had a header wide. And obviously, Son went through on goal with a great ball from Porro, which went over the bar. He should have done better with that one. So there was some chances, but there wasn't like a flurry of clear-cut chances, I would say.
No, it wasn't. And you can't expect a flurry of clear-cut chances when you're playing against the best defensive team in the league, especially the way that they did set up on the day. They set up to frustrate us. That's what they did. They set up in a very low block. They relied on set pieces and counter-attacks yesterday, so you got to say that their game plan worked to perfection, because that's what they got. They got set pieces, they got counter-attacks. That's the way they scored. Apart from that, I don't really feel that they threatened us throughout the whole game. Even the set pieces that they did have in the second half, I felt that we did deal with them well. But the damage was done already. The damage was done in that first half, and you got to look at 15 minutes in, Spurs have all the play. Spurs are asking the questions. Maybe not too many questions, but I thought we were the ones in the ascendancy. 15 minutes goes, a corner comes in, their first corner of the game. Højbjerg puts it into the back of our own net. Very frustrating. Whether Højbjerg should be starting or not, that's another question. But I did feel like after that goal that we did concede, again, we responded well. We started to get on the ball. I think Romero had that chance very shortly after we go 1-0 down. I think Sonny had a chance in that period as well, I believe, or were we 2-0 down at that point?
I think we might be 3-0 down at that point.
Either way, I did think we responded very well. And even with that Romero chance that hits the post, I felt like he was fouled as well in that moment, getting pushed at the back post. So there's another shout for a penalty there. And Michael Oliver, what was Michael Oliver on yesterday? I felt like he may as well had a red shirt on yesterday, seriously. Like, he didn't want to give Spurs anything throughout the whole 90 minutes. And even the penalty that was given, he didn't want to give that. And that was the most stonewall penalty I've ever seen in that second half. Declan Rice takes a lump out of Kulusevski, I think it was. Ben Davis, sorry. And I mean, he's 2 yards away from that. Like, how the hell is he not calling that? And it has to go to VAR. He has to go to the screen and the monitor, and then he decides to point to the spot. But I mean, like, how can it even come to that? He's 2 yards away from it and he kicks a lump out of him. It's the most stonewall penalty I've ever seen. And if he doesn't give that straight away, like, it makes sense that he's not giving the other ones. I mean, how many penalty shouts did we have throughout the game? And it wasn't just that. The way they were toying with Vicario from the set piece as well. Ben White was trying to take off his glove and all this kind of stuff. I do feel like they did a bit of a number on Vicario, and I'm sorry, Vicario's got to be stronger in these kind of situations. He's got to be stamping his authority and owning that 6-yard box, and he didn't do that yesterday, Vicario. And
big difference to Raya.
Big difference to Raya, 100%.
Raya did.
Yeah, Raya was coming and claiming everything, but Vicario was weak. He was weak from the set pieces, and I think it is a kind of narrative that you're seeing form now throughout these aspects that we are the way we defend our set pieces. The goalkeeper has got to be doing a lot stronger. You can't. There was a clip of Ben White and Vicario with that moment that I was talking about, that he was trying to take off his glove. I mean, like, Vicario just didn't know really what to do in that situation, and Ben White showed the dirty side of the game, which you probably need to do to go and win these kind of games.
100%. And I think if Vicario's gonna, if they're gonna basically play games with Vicario and they're going to back into him and things like that, if the ref's not going to call it, the ref's not going to give it a foul, and VAR's not going to get involved, then Vicario has to take matters into his own hands. He can't rely on anyone else but himself to make sure those situations don't come about. So if they're going to shove him, he has to shove them back. He has to absolutely get ahead of them. He has to be a lot stronger. He has to make sure he's got the space to come and claim it. Now, the problem is the way we combated that was we had in recent weeks anyways, we had a player protecting Vicario, which we didn't have yesterday. But the problem with that is that a player protecting Vicario seemed to take away from defending the set pieces, and it ended up a free man was usually there, and it ended up costing us a lot of the time. So it's difficult to know what the solution is. I think Vicario just himself, I think he is the solution. I don't think we should need a defender protecting him. I think he shouldn't have to protect himself. He just has to be stronger. He has to give as good as he gets. And I feel like at the moment he's allowing himself to be manipulated in these situations so that he's not able to come for crosses, whereas he should just be shoving them. He should be doing anything he can to create that space. And if the referee's not going to call them shoving the keeper, they shouldn't be calling Vicario doing it back to them. What I would also say is, I thought Van de Ven was a good shout for him being fouled for that third goal. Havertz has two arms in his back. Yeah. You know what? All these situations, if I probably even wouldn't be talking about them if we didn't see on Saturday night what happened at Chelsea, Villa Chelsea, because there was a push from Badiashile, which I thought, for me, probably was a foul. Yeah, I agree with that. But should VAR be getting involved in those ones? Was it a clear and obvious error? Was it just like an aggressive barge, and maybe if the referee saw it and played on, you give the goal? The fact that VAR got involved in that and said, no, actually we're going to give the foul for that set a precedent for me. That set a precedent saying, okay, any shove in the box where it's even though it's shoulder to shoulder, wherever, if there's a shove in the box where there's no clear intention to get the ball and it shoves the player away, you're going to give the foul for that. That's the precedent they set. And yet yesterday, we see Havertz shoving Van de Ven in the back, no foul. We see Partey shoving Romero when he's about to score, no foul. All these situations, which could have easily been very similar to what happened with Badiashile then literally the day before, and yet VAR's not getting involved in those ones, and they did get involved in the Chelsea one. That is a massive frustration for me. Yeah,
I completely agree. I mean, there's not much more to say on that. It seems to happen to Tottenham time and time again, though, these kind of things. And I want to talk about the goal that was disallowed from Mickey Van de Ven. I mean, yes, it was a minuscule offside. You got to put your hands up to that. I mean, whether you think these ones should be should be given offside when the rule change comes in, or if the rule change ever comes in, then that will probably be deemed onside. But we saw Romero tweeted straight after the game saying, well, West Ham scored a goal exactly like that against us when it comes off their man, our man, and I think it was Ward-Prowse went through on goal and it gets given a goal. I don't know. Was the rule changed? Was the rule changed or something? Like if it goes off their own man and it's not intentional, then it's not offside anymore.
No, there's a difference between those two goals because Bone was onside when the shot was taken. Van de Ven wasn't, so that's the difference essentially. But
like, when was the rule changed that when it hits off an opposition defender and the player's offside, it's offside? Because it used to be that if it goes off an opposition defender, no matter what, then it's fine.
No, that's never been the rule. The rule's always been it has to be an intentional move from the defender. So a shot that deflects off a defender and falls into the path of a player who's offside, that's always been offside. Then the rule never changed. But if a player obviously has control of the ball and then passes it back or whatever, or has a bad back pass to a player who's offside, that's obviously a goal because the player on the ball had control of the ball. So the rule's always been that the player has to have made a deliberate movement. Now that's caused a lot of controversy. I remember, I think it was maybe in the Nations League last year or a couple of years ago, a ball was played through to Mbappe, and there was a defender who did a sliding challenge to try and block the pass, right? And he did a sliding challenge. He got a touch on it, but it wasn't a good enough touch to get it away from Mbappe, who scored. He was in an offside position, but they decided to give it because they felt that touch by the defender was an intentional enough touch for it to count as a goal. Now, yesterday, Tomiyasu very clearly gets his leg out and to block the shot. But the problem is, they say, the claim is that it's he doesn't have control of the ball. He didn't have control of the ball when he made that touch, so it doesn't go towards the offside. So unfortunately, it's just one of those things. That is the rule. I think they applied it correctly. I think it's very hard to take when the ball goes off two Arsenal defenders,
you know what I mean?
And falls to Mickey van der Ven and scores. It's a very hard one to take. But the law says if neither defender had control of the ball, then it doesn't the play won't reset, so it goes back to the shot. Whether you agree with that, but it's by the by, but it's unfortunate that is the rule.
I think in that situation, though, it's just a terrible rule, right? How can you play ping pong over two Arsenal players, fall to Mickey van der Ven, who's like a slither offside? You know what I mean? It's just a really hard one to take.
It is a very hard one.
Really?
And also, I've always had this disagreement, but the way they draw offside lines, all that kind of stuff. I mean, a lot of the time I feel like they're just guessing. They're guessing where the last point is, and they're making all these millimeter judgments on technology, which isn't fit for purpose, in my opinion. You look at the footage that they're judging it on. It's very grainy. It's very pixelated. It's very hard to tell where the last point of the defender is and where they should be drawing the line. I've had this complaint ever since they brought in VAR, ever since they started doing offsides this way. I'm not just complaining about it because Spurs on the end of it. I don't like the way they do it, but it's the same for everyone, so we have to just take it on the chin. But it's very, very frustrating that goal got disallowed.
It's the same for everyone, but they don't exactly keep the consistency for everyone on the decisions, though, do they? That's the most frustrating thing about
offsides
it.
they do, but I agree, the subjective ones, they don't.
It's ridiculous, a lot of them. But look, in terms of the lineup that Ange chose yesterday, he did throw in a few surprises, didn't he? Playing Pierre-Emile Højbjerg in the number 6, no Sarr, Bentancur played, no Bissouma, no Johnson. Kulusevski started on the right, Werner started on the left, albeit Werner went off fairly early because of an injury and Brennan Johnson came on. I thought it was probably the wrong decision to start Pierre-Emile Højbjerg in the game yesterday. Obviously, I'm not going to he scores the own goal, but I'm not saying that's the reason why it was the wrong decision. I just felt like we did look a little bit better when Bissouma came on and Pape Matar Sarr. And I thought Pape actually looked really good when he came on. He kept us high up the pitch. He kept recycling the ball. He put pressure on those Arsenal midfielders and defenders and kept winning the ball and being able to sustain that pressure that we had in the last 20 minutes. So what was your thoughts on maybe starting Højbjerg?
I wasn't against it pre-game because obviously Basuma's not been in great form. Højbjerg is obviously a bit more combative. Maybe he can give us a bit more solidity when it comes to making sure that we're containing Arsenal a bit better. And I thought maybe he did that. What I would say is on the ball, I thought he wasn't great. I thought on times he was put under pressure. That was really, I thought he gave the ball away a few times in poor areas, and that was really disappointing. I think he showed why, to be honest, he can't be our number 6 as going forward long term. We know that he's probably going to leave in the summer, but I think yesterday was a good indication of that. I thought Basum was decent when he came on. I thought Sarr was really good when he came on. Actually, I really liked Sarr, but I understand why he changed it. He said before the game that he put Højbjerg in because he's been playing really, really well in training recently. So if that's the case, I'm not going to hold that against him if that's the judgment he made. However, I think the stats say Højbjerg started, I think, 9 games this season, and I think we've lost like 8 of them or something to that effect. So he's clearly, I don't think he's the answer in that position. But Basuma hasn't been in great form, so I understand the need to change it up. And as well, if Højbjerg is showing good stuff in training, I'm happy for Ange to make that decision for it to be a meritocracy. Bentancur, on the other hand, had a bit of a disappointing day again. Still not up to his
started
best.
well, though, didn't he?
He did.
He started well in the first 10, 15 minutes, and I was like, all right, Bentancur. But it's like very similar to the Bentancur performances that we've seen over the last, few weeks. Well, more than few weeks, maybe month, where he starts well. You're seeing these like little silky moves in there from Bentancur, and then he just kind of diminishes out the game.
Yeah, I felt like, again, with Bentancur, he was quite good, like, getting stuck in Arsenal's faces in their half and pressing. But once it went to him trying to protect the back line in our own half and doing that kind of dirty work, he was struggling to get back in position. I feel like that's been the case for him for the last few weeks. He's actually quite good when he's in the opposition's half, but when he's on our own half, he has tended to struggle quite a bit. And I'm not sure why that is, but I think that has been a pattern with Bentancur. And obviously was taken off at half time for Sarr, who I thought had a really good second half. So maybe it was a mistake. Maybe, I don't know how he is in training. Obviously, Bentancur was a more senior player to Sarr, so maybe Ange feels like having that kind of experience in the lineup would have done us good, but unfortunately it didn't work. And also, one thing I wanted to pick up from Højbjerg as well on the own goal he scored. I think it's easy to point at that own goal and say, oh, it's unlucky, it's just an own goal, it can happen to anyone. But I watched it back. I think he makes a really crucial mistake from that own goal, because he's actually the reason why he's stretching is because he's not goal side to Tomiyasu. The corner comes in and he's on the wrong side to Tomiyasu, and Tomiyasu's about to head it in, so he's stretching back to get the ball to try and head the ball back away because he's made a mistake not being goal side. If he doesn't touch it, Tomiyasu heads it in, so he's forced to stretch back and touch it, and ends up heading it back into his own goal. So I think Højbjerg actually made a big mistake from that corner. I don't think it's just a simple, like, some own goals you say, it's an own goal, it's not much you can do about it, but I don't think that was the case with Højbjerg's one, in my opinion.
Yeah, I think you're spot on, to be fair. And the goal that we did concede from the counter-attack, I mean, it was always going to be a mismatch, Saka coming up against Ben Davies in those one-on-ones. But Ben Davies, with all the know-how and all the experience that he does have, he can't be letting Saka come on the inside like that. He needs to be showing him on the outside. And I don't understand, in such a big game, yes, decisions didn't go against us. We should have had a penalty on the other side with Kulusevski. But once we are in that situation, Ben Davies has got to do everything that he possibly can to keep him on the outside, and he doesn't do that.
Yeah, unfortunately, the reality is Saka's a very good winger in that position, one-on-one. That's why a lot of teams double up on him, because if you allow him one-on-one against your fullback, he's got the pace and he's got the quick change in direction to go whatever direction he wants to, essentially, especially against a defender like Ben Davies. No disrespect, who's a good defender, but he's not the quickest, he's not the sharpest, and you're going to need that kind of movement to compete with someone like Saka. I knew as soon as Saka got in all that space on the counter, we were in trouble. He was going to get the shot off, and it was about whether Vicario could save it or whether he was going to miss. I knew he was going to be able to cut inside because Davies wasn't going to be able to stop him because he's not good enough defender to do that. Yes, he could show him down the line, but Saka's a good enough a player to go both ways, to be honest. And I think Davies could have done a bit more. That's not to say if Saka goes down the line, he could score the goal that way as well. I've seen him score goals with his right foot. Obviously, there's less chance, but we can never leave Davis one-on-one with Saka in that position. That's a team failure rather than a Davis failure, in my opinion. I knew that was always going to happen, but and I also have complaints about what Ange said after the game, the finer details in that moment where we should have had a penalty, yes, but I think Ange's absolutely right. We're too busy claiming for a penalty and remonstrating to the referee. We're not getting ourselves back in position. We're not realising the danger of a counter-attack that's ahead of us. And we pretty much like allowed it to happen. We were like incensed we didn't get the decision. And it's almost like we allowed the counter-attack to play out because I don't know if we wanted VAR to go back to check it or whatnot, or we were just still angry about the decision. But Arsenal just got on with it. They went on the counter, they scored the goal, and they weren't bothered about what happened the other end. Whereas we seemed to be concentrating on that, and it cost us a goal. Well, I would say it was a penalty. Kulusevski was clipped. I think it is a penalty. I don't think VAR are ever going to go back to change that. I don't think VAR are ever going to get involved in that kind of decision because I don't think it's clear and obvious. I think that's right. I don't think VAR should be going back on that kind of decision. I think the referee made a mistake, though. I do think that should have been a penalty, and I think we were hard done by.
I do think, when you look at the two teams, I do think, like I said before, our Spurs were unlucky to lose. We were the ones that had all the possession, asking most of the questions on the day. But I do feel like when you look at these two teams, you can see that one is at the beginning phase of their project and the other one has been in a title race last year. They're in a title race now, which looks as though it's going to go to the death. And you saw maybe a bit of know-how of how to get through these games between the two sides. And Arsenal, they showed that horrible, gritty side of the game where they push things to the limits. Where Spurs, again, it's the kind of thing that we've been saying all the time under Jose Mourinho, under Conte, even under Pochettino to a certain extent at times, that we're just too nice and we don't show that gritty, horrible side of the game. And I think that's a lot what it came down to yesterday.
Yeah, and I think Ange put it perfectly, the finer details, when especially those crucial moments from set pieces where Arsenal were doing everything they can to get those bits of space. They're being very cute, they're using the dark arts, and we're falling for it every time. We're allowing them to do it. We're not pushing back. The only people who seem to be doing it were people like Kuti, who weren't taking anything. But the other players seemed to allow Arsenal to do what they wanted in the box. And I thought we were quite aggressive actually yesterday. I thought we were doing the pressing really well. We were actually getting in their faces and tackling in really dangerous positions where Arsenal probably wouldn't have expected to lose the ball. But we didn't make the most of that. And I think in open play we were quite aggressive and quite good. But I thought when it came to the finer details, set pieces, and it came for moments for Arsenal to use those dark arts, that's what cost us. We haven't even touched on the second half yet. But the first half, definitely 3-0 down. The game was always going to be gone by then. Yeah,
well, I mean, let's talk about the second half then, because I thought when the players came out, actually Arsenal probably started that second half the better up until maybe we made those changes. And I think Ange probably could have made the changes a bit earlier than he did, which is a bit frustrating because I think as soon as we did make those changes, Spurs were completely dominant and were back on top again. But Arsenal, they started for the first 15-20 minutes of that second half probably the better side, and that was the best moment that they had in the game in my opinion, which is crazy to think about because they were 3-0 up at that time.
Yeah.
But that was the most frustrating thing of the game, right?
Probably the only point where they actually dominated the game.
Yeah, they dominated the game for the first 20 minutes of the second half, but still didn't create too much, did they?
They had that one big chance from Saka, which was quite a big miss, and Vicario does really well.
But that's it.
That was the only real big chance they properly created. From open play, from when they had obviously they got the counter attack which they scored from, but only period where they dominated possession and then carved out a clear opportunity. That was the only one they did throughout the whole game pretty much, and obviously Vicario saved it. And then as you say, we made a double sub. Bassoum and Richarlison came on for Maddison and for Højbjerg. And I thought that was the right decision. I put Kulu in the centre, who I thought in the centre as well played quite well. So I agree with that decision. And actually, I think within a minute we had got a goal. Obviously, a lot of luck. Raya with a really bad pass.
It was actually in the same minute that we made the subs.
That was it. It was literally straight away, I remember. So great reaction to the subs being made. Romero playing in his striking position, which he seemed to for a lot of that second half. Playing
I don't know what Ray is doing at that point, though.
Yeah, he just completely scuffed a left-footed pass. I think maybe he just got a bit too what's the word? Not confident, just like he got overconfident essentially. It sounded like they were strutting their stuff at that point. They were 3-0 up. They were like, having it all their own way. And maybe he thought, I can clip this with my left foot. Who cares? Like, I can get it to the Declan Rice, whatever. Completely scuffs it. Falls to Romero, 3-1.
Cool finish as well.
Very
really
cool finish. First time into the corner. Nice stuff for Romero. Obviously, yes, they do give us the goal. But with 25 minutes to go, or nearly half an hour to go, you felt like, we got one back, and maybe this game is still there if we can get another one quickly.
Yeah, we didn't get one quick enough, essentially. That was the problem. We after that goal, it was all Spurs. I felt like we penned them into their own kind of third of the pitch. The frustrating thing was Brennan Johnson, right? Brennan Johnson, I thought, had the beating of his fullback every single time. He was being very direct. His dribbling was on point. But those crosses in the box, man, were just so frustrating. Every time, just a floated ball in the box. And Raya, they were so easy for him. Yeah. Every single time. They were just so easy for him. And we had a focal point in the box with Richarlison, who I thought came on and provided well for us. He combated well. He gave us a bit of a focal point. But it came to nothing because the crosses in the box were just so bad.
Yeah, we had no quality supply to him, unfortunately. That was what stopped Richarlison really getting involved when it came to trying to score a goal. I thought he did some good stuff when it came to holding the ball up in like general play, like when it came like on the halfway line and stuff, and really helped us get up the pitch. And I thought we were doing some really good stuff from there. We were getting the ball to Johnson, to Son. They were causing their fullbacks trouble, but the delivery just that wasn't there. I thought Gabriel, Saliba dealt with most of it, and obviously a lot of them were floated right into David Raya's hands. And every time you do that, that's like another 30 seconds gone because Raya, goes down the ground, he pats the ball down, and obviously then he launches it forward. So that was a good way of eating up time. So not only it was like a double-edged sword. Not only was it a wasted opportunity to get a good quality cross in, it's also wasting time because Raya is able to gobble those crosses up, and he did that time and time again. And that was a big frustration, especially when at that moment we got the likes of Richarlison in the box, we got the likes of Romero in the box. It wasn't like in the first half where we didn't really have a presence in the box. We had players there to aim at, and we just weren't able to find the quality to do so. So that was a big undoing, I felt, in terms of good play, but we didn't make the most of it.
Yeah, and that was the most frustrating thing, where we were so dominant in that period, and we had the ball literally in their third of the park for predominantly 95% of those situations, and we just couldn't do anything with it. And I think that's a testament to maybe the attacking players that we do have right now, and we need a big improvement of that in the summer if we're gonna forward this team.
Which Ange said. He said that's the thing we need most improvement. He was quite clear about that in the press conference. That's the thing where he wants to improve the most. And it's after that kind of display, it's hard to disagree when you're playing against we're at a stage now where we can play against Arsenal and have the majority of the ball. We can dominate the play. But now the next step is really having that quality in the final third to win the game against them. And that just wasn't there.
We've been at that stage all season, though. We have. Game at the Emirates, we dominated the possession as well in the early part of the season. I'm looking at our 2 games against Arsenal now, which is a good sample size. 1 game at the Emirates, 1 game at Spurs, and I feel like we've dominated over both games, and we've very unluckily come away with just 1 point.
Yeah,
which is the most frustrating thing. We could have taken a win at the Emirates, and we could have taken a win yesterday. That's the most frustrating thing about the whole situation, where yesterday the kind of know-how refereeing decisions have let us down. And what's really gets to me is that you get yourselves up for these games all week. We had 2 weeks to mull over the Newcastle game in anticipation for the North London derby, and we're sitting here the day after the North London derby talking about refereeing decisions and how the referee ruined the game, because I felt like that's exactly what happened.
Yeah, it's very frustrating. It's very unfortunate. It's one of those where it's hard to take because we played well. We did ourselves proud, I thought, in terms of how we did play against obviously a very good Arsenal team. On another day, it could have easily been a draw or even a win for sure in Tottenham's favour. But part of me feels like, as much as I'm frustrated with the refs and all that, we also only have ourselves to blame with how we defended those set pieces, which we knew were coming. So there's like 2 ways you can look at it. I think from what I'm seeing on social media as well, there's like 2 reactions to this. Is like, one reaction is like, look, you can see what Ange is building. That, like, some people are saying this defeat even more makes you believe in Ange because of how we played against a very good Arsenal team. And even though we lost, you saw how the football we played and how we can control a game against a very good side. And you can see where needs improving and what we need to do in the summer to improve these sides. And if we do that, if we improve these certain aspects, we're going to be a very good team next season. But then on the other side, you've got people saying, well, Ange knew these problems. They're the same we've had the same issues for a number of weeks now. We've shown inconsistent form, those set pieces. We keep doing the same thing every single game, and that cost us yet again yesterday. And we should have seen that coming. And it's not as if it should have been a surprise to Ange. And is Ange, ever going to learn from his mistakes, essentially, is the other narrative. So I understand both. I think the second one is quite very, very harsh, but I understand it. I understand what he's saying. And it's quite... I do believe yesterday, looking at how we played and looking at going forward, I do believe that you can very clearly see what needs improving. And if we did that, then I think we could be flying next season. Yeah,
that's the way I look at it, and that's the way I'm sitting here. I'm sitting here obviously very down because we have lost to Arsenal in a game which I didn't think we did. But when you look at the way the game went, yes, are there things that we need to improve on and brush up on? 100%, of course there are. But are there signs that Spurs are going in the right way? I think 100% as well. So it's worlds away to the North London derby that we played at the back end of last season against Arsenal when we lost 2-0. We didn't even have a foothold in that game whatsoever. In these two games against Arsenal this season, I felt like we've dominated both of them and come away with 1 point essentially. So I think you're looking at the progression of Tottenham. It's there for all to see. But there's a lot of things that we need to work on and brush up on, and a lot of things that we need to improve on, and that's kind of expected where you're at the end of the first season under a new manager, new project, losing Harry Kane, all the injuries that we had this season. So there's been a lot of factors that have gone against us this season. And I think it's a credit to Ange and a testament to showing progression still at this point of the season.
Yeah, definitely. So it's gutting that we've let Arsenal win on our ground. That's never going to be nice. It's never going to be a situation that I find the biggest thing yesterday was to try and stop them, and we couldn't do it, and that's so hard to take. But sorry, sometimes you just gotta take the game into account, how it went, what happened on the pitch, and you got to see it for what it was. And we got very unlucky with a lot of decisions. We got very unlucky with a lot of chances that we did miss, and we showed a lot of fight at 3-0 down. I think most teams in the Premier League at 3-0 down, it becomes 4-5 against Arsenal, and the fact we clawed it back to 3-2 and if the game goes on for a bit longer, maybe it could have gone to 3-3. I think you got to commend the character, and that's not the last time we showed that, which I'm also proud of, because I know we were 4-0 down against Brighton. That's never acceptable to be in that position. But again, in that game, we rallied late on, got 2 late goals, and we could have actually drawn that game with the chances we had late on. So at least this team shows a willingness to never give up and keep going, even when things seem impossible.
Yeah,
so you got to give them credit for that. I guess.
There's as Ange says, there's a lot of growth in this team yet to come, and I think we need to stamp out the kind of naivety in our play, which Ange was talking about in terms of just relying on that set penalty instead of chasing back and trying to stop Saka on the counter attack and chances like that. But it's not like Arsenal were there and cutting us open at will. You know what I mean? Like they've done to a lot of teams this season. Look at what they did to Chelsea last week, in that second half. Even in the first half, how many chances did they create? We didn't let them do that to us. And that's what they said would happen if we play a high line, if we play these same tactics that we've been deploying all season. Arsenal are going to absolutely ruin us and cut us open at will. That didn't happen, and we were the better team on the day, and it's just unfortunate with the way the things kind of panned out. So
it was just a day of what could have been. If Højbjerg doesn't put it in his own net, if we get the penalty instead of Arsenal going 2-0 up, if Van der Ven's goal counts, all these different things that just didn't go our way. That's a lot of things, by the way, to not go your way. And a lot of them didn't. So it was a day of what could have been. Unfortunately, Arsenal were the ones to come out on top.
Yeah, man. I was sitting there and it just felt, I'm not saying this was the case, but it just felt like they're just trying, the Premier League gods and the referees are just trying to keep Arsenal in this title race, basically. That's what it felt like to me. I'm not saying that was the case, but that's just like, you just feel like all these conspiratorial things coming your way, and the amount of decisions that went against us I mean, it's hard not to feel like that, because at that point before the game, if Man City win and Arsenal don't win, you feel like the title race is over, right? So it just felt like they were just trying to keep Arsenal in this title race by hook or by crook. But this bloody Michael Oliver, so frustrating. But look, I'm still proud in terms of the way we have played this season. I'm proud in the way we did fight back yesterday, and I don't think we did deserve to lose the game, as I've said on a number of occasions. So that is your match review from the 3-2 loss against Arsenal yesterday. Let's get through a few super chats before we move on. Welcome to Platinum, by the way, to Tyson Dello. Jaden with the super chat says we should try Kuti in the 6 for these last few games. You know what? Kuti was insane yesterday. What a performance he put in. I said after the game Kulusevski was our best player, but I actually think Kuti Romero was on reflection. Defensively, I thought he was brilliant. The way he was driving us up the pitch, he was probably our biggest threat on goal yesterday as well.
Get him in the 6, put him up front.
That's where he was playing for the majority of that second half.
He nearly scored a hat-trick.
Yeah, it was unbelievable. But I actually said on a panel show, let's try Kuti in a 6. I think last week or a couple of weeks ago. I mean, I think he's got the attributes to do it.
Yeah, potentially. I mean,
he's not great on the ball.
He's good on the ball. Can he cover like the amount of ground he has to cover to be a 6? You know what I mean? And it's different being good on the ball when you've got time and space. It's another thing when you've got midfielders, tight spaces. Like you've got to make quick decisions. You've got to be turning on the ball. You have to drive with the ball. I don't know. I haven't seen that from Kuti, to be honest.
Yeah, I think he could do it. I don't see a reason why not. I mean, you haven't seen it because he hasn't been in those situations. But if you put him in those situations, you know, sink or swim, and I think he'll swim.
Yeah, but I don't know. I feel like we need him at centre-back.
No, we do need him at centre-back because, you know, Dragusin comes in and we haven't seen much from Dragusin as of yet. But, you know, you never know. Andrew Dean with the super chat says, VAR was atrocious on the Kulu incident. The match review in USA Network showed that Kulu got clipped by Trossard. And, yeah, we did cover that. And, look, it was a penalty. There's no two ways about it. And then Arsenal go up at the other end and score straight away.
Yeah, I disagree that. I think though that situation, the only thing that frustrates me is the consistency. I do think in that situation, VAR should not be getting involved because I don't think it's clear and obvious in my opinion. Although I do think there was a penalty. But then you've seen incidences previously where there's been a clip and VAR does get involved, and that's the frustration, is the consistency. But I think in a perfect world, VAR probably shouldn't be getting involved in that incident.
I think if he went down straight away, VAR probably would have got involved.
Yeah, if he goes down, I think Oliver probably points. Because he stayed on his feet, he was a bit too honest.
Oliver ain't pointing for Spurs, no chance.
Kulusevski.
Video Complete says, I was thinking maybe using Dragusin centre-back next to Van de Ven and Romero DM next to Sarr. Dragusin with his height would help us in corners and free kicks. I mean, I would like to see us try it out at least once.
I mean...
Maybe now. I mean, we've got nothing to play for the rest of the season. So, I mean, why not try a few new things out?
Maybe use a back 3. I don't know. I just don't know about Romero in the middle. I've not seen him when he's got, like... loads of opposition players around him and like wriggling out of situations. I don't know if he's capable of that. It could be a disaster.
Well, I mean, our defensive midfielders at the moment as well, it's not exactly like they're performing out of their skin and they deserve to keep their spot.
No, that's also true.
Andrew Din as well saying, thought we lost my man in the match. What?
Though we lost,
my man in the match is Romero. He was almost the only Spurs player who took responsibility and played with pride for the Spurs shirt. And I agree with that. I thought Romero was hands down our best player. But you got to give massive props to Mickey Van de Ven as well. I mean, in that second half, he was defending all on his own when Romero was high up the pitch. And how many times was Martinelli through on goal? This one through on goal, that one through on goal. None of them had a chance. Literally none of them had a chance. Van de Ven gobbled them up for fun every single time.
It was great, and it's not easy to do because think about that Arsenal game against Villa. They were a very similar situation, right? Piling players forward, and they just needed one long ball to Watkins, and he was in on goal, and they made it 2, right? So they just needed one chance to do that. Yeah, Arsenal, we're chasing the game, and yet they're putting Havertz and then Martinelli through on goal multiple times, and yet Van de Ven's there every single time to gobble it up. So it shows what an asset he is.
If we didn't have Van de Ven yesterday, that second half could have been a bit of a bloody onslaught because we could have lost about 5, 6 or 7. I'm not even joking. That's how many goals Van de Ven saved, literally on his own.
Agreed.
Jory, big up Jory. He says, and selected Højbjerg. He gave Saka acres with Davis to cover. He had zone defence on corners like a novice. The list goes on. Unlucky every game. Nah, that's Ange not testing the odds. Strike 3. Big up. He's saying he's not happy with Ange.
I think there's a lot to criticise. I think Davis, obviously, he didn't really have too much of a choice to whether to play him or not, but you could have guessed put Van der Ven there maybe, but Davis is our backup left back, so you put him in, and I always thought that was going to be a difficult one up against Saka, and so it proved. When it comes to the corners, 100% that's on Ange. He's the one who continues to set up in that way. He's the one who has seen the issues. It's not like this is a new issue. This has been an issue from us for a long, long time. Then you're coming up against the best set-piece team in the league, and you're doing things exactly the same way. So I agree with that, and I do hope he comes up with something new next year. And it's not like things can change. Arsenal weren't always this good at set pieces, you know what I mean? So it shows they can adapt and change year on year. And I'm sure Ange hopefully next year will take a hard look at that and hopefully sort it out. It's actually been a problem ever since pre-season. I remember even in pre-season we conceded a few goals on set pieces, and he said it's because I haven't had too much time with
Is that the West Ham game we conceded set pieces?
He said, I don't blame the players because I actually haven't had too much time to do set pieces with them, and it seems as though nothing has changed, which is frustrating. But it
seems to be getting worse.
Yeah.
These last two games, Newcastle and Arsenal, I mean...
There's been a chance on every set piece.
Yeah, pretty much. I haven't seen such bad defending from set pieces in a long, long time. And that Newcastle game, they probably could have scored about 5 goals from set pieces, literally. We were just lucky they didn't. And then against Arsenal, we conceded our first 2 corners that we conceded in the game. It's a shambles.
And in terms of Ange selected Højbjerg, I mean, yes, he selected Højbjerg, he didn't have a good game, scored an own goal, and wasn't great, but could have easily played Basuma, and then he could have had a shock, and then we said, oh, you should have dropped him, you should have played Højbjerg, Basuma's not been in good form, doesn't deserve to start, blah, blah, blah. So it's kind of like pick your poison on that kind of one.